Lord, we thank you for this chance and opportunity to come before your presence, to invoke your presence in this meeting tonight. We pray for our mayor, Maddie Parker, as she continues to lead this thriving city. Pray for our city manager, Mr. David Cook, and him and all the council members that work together to hold her hands up to carry out the vision for Fort Worth. God, tonight we pray for our Department of Public Safety, Police Department, Fire Department, and EMS, that they keep us safe and secure in this area. And pray for all our men and women in uniform, that your spirit be upon us tonight and give us your spirit of love and peace. This we pray and ask in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor, the first item for consideration is approval of the minutes, items 22-1993 and 22-1994, the minutes from the June 7th council meetings.
Thank you, Jeanette. I've got a motion. Second, any other discussion, council? Please vote. I can't. Jared, can you vote? It's okay. And motion carries.
Mayor, that concludes the action items for tonight.
Thank you, Jeanette. We're going to move right into public comment period. What's that? You haven't gotten any yet? Okay, no worries. I'll start with this first list then. Council members, if you're following along, we're going to move to our in-person speakers. Our callers aren't answering at the moment. We'll go back if we need to. We do have quite a few public presentations this evening, so I'll do my best to help cue people. I'll call a name and then a second name so you kind of know who's coming up to the microphone next. Our first speaker will be Kristin Walker, followed by Angela Mckinney.
Good evening. How are you guys doing?
Great, thank you.
I just want to first of all thank you guys for taking the time to meet this tonight and speak with me. And I also wanted to call out a couple people before I get into it. Michael Crane's office, I've been able to speak with him quite a few times, and Michael Graham in the City Code Compliance Office as well. I've been speaking with him, and they've worked wonderfully with me. But I feel that I need to bring this to the attention of all of you, just so you do know what's going on within the city. And I apologize, I'm shaking a little bit, I'm a little bit nervous, so I apologize. My name is Kristin Walker. I've lived in my home for approximately 24 years. The issue that's going on right now, I know there's a lot of talk about short-term rentals, so on and so forth, but the issue that I have right now is a home that's gone in next door to me. They have gutted the home, and they have put 7 bedrooms in the home, 1 kitchen that they share, 2 bathrooms that they share, along with a washer and dryer that they share. They have 7 renters in there at this time. A citation has been issued, but I've been following the issue since November, talking with code compliance, trying to get return phone calls, trying to take action on it. I know that code compliance issued on January 25th. They had 30 days to comply to get permits. They had no permits for anything that they did. They had 30 days to comply, and I know on January 6th, the owner, he lives in Georgia, but he does have people that represent for him. He applied for the permits, but nothing to this day has been uploaded and nothing's been completed. So permits are still not there. I can tell you what they've done with the home is bringing down the value of my home, because things that were done were not permitted. They have a window in the side of the house when they took out the garage that is totally crooked. The cars that they have in front of the house are not only 7, but they could have 2 people in each bedroom. So there could be up to 14 cars for this one person. They have, of course, little things, blocked my mailbox. I can't get my mail. speaking on that, I know that I have spoken to the mail lady and the carrier. The carriers will not deliver mail there because it is not considered a true residence. So they will not deliver mail there. They advertise on padsplit.com and they advertise on realtor.com. But what they advertise for is only 4 bedrooms total because they know that that's all they're allowed. I can speak for myself. When the home was being built and other neighbors, we have been through the home and seen it. There is 7 rooms with 7 numbers on it that they are renting out. They have the choice of renting by the week or they have the choice of renting by the month. So my concern is the value to the neighborhood. I do have paperwork for each one of you with all of the documentation from November, along with the signed petition for the other neighbors within the neighborhood. Most of us have been there 17 years or longer. So I would like to be able to pass that to you, and so you would have it for record as well. That's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
We don't, Kristin. Thank you so much. I want to make sure you know Val Washington, who oversees the code department, making sure you have her information as well. Okay. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Angela McKinney, followed by Beverly Sims.
Angela McKinney, Fort Worth, District 3. I am present to speak about loud music, noise ordinance in the Lake Como neighborhood. The main culprits are excessive loud Tejano and mariachi music, be it live bands and or blaring through a speaker system. The decibel is positioned high that it disturbs the elderly, the physically disabled, the proletariats or employed persons, Black, white, Mexican Americans, and Mexican nationals who are law-abiding and respectful. We, the residents, are held as captive audiences in our homes because the sound permeates into the interior of our homes. In addition, this causes the windows and structures to vibrate. The noise violations occurs weekly. One gathering began at 6 p.m. and ended at 4 a.m. the next early morning. Or it can start as early as 7:30 on a Sunday morning, for example. Boom, 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 boom. This is enough to wake the deceased. I'm sorry. The noise can be heard 5 blocks away. I am cultured and I listen to Italian opera and classical music, but I don't blare it outside of my dwelling. I did send an email to Councilman Michael Crane regarding this issue. As a result, met with the Community Engagement Office liaison. It was stated to call 911 and not the non-emergency number. This way the calls can be tracked. Now, Fort Worth Police Department, I'm gonna have to call you out. I would like to inform the West Division that these gatherings produce inebriated or drunken individuals. When after dispersing, they drive away drunk, which eventually will result in a fatality to other residents of the general public. All that's heard is popping and clanging of Corona bottles. The complaint against the West Division is police not enforcing the noise ordinance, and the noise continues. The residents want relief. Start issuing citations, and the monetary fines will solve the problem. Officers, would you allow this music to disturb your neighborhood? Stop not doing anything about it when you answer the call. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKinney. Our next speaker is Beverly Sims, followed by James Sims.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Beverly Sims. I live at 6935 Craig Street for 50 years as of July the 4th this year. For all these years, we have enjoyed peace and quiet of an established neighborhood until this past year. The house across the street was being remodeled, and I was told it was for a family member, which was good since it had been vacant for a while. But then no one moved in. In December, I asked a person staying there if he was our new neighbor. Oh, no, ma'am, it's an Airbnb. Stunned, we started researching short-term rentals and found out more and more about the ugliness that STRs bring into neighborhoods and that they are illegal in single-family neighborhoods in Fort Worth. Crime, noise, strangers, traffic, night and day. We contacted code, and the STR across the street was issued can't read my writing, a letter of notice that they were out of compliance. Then we had a letter in our mailbox about 2 days later from the owner stating no more STRs, only 30-day rentals going forward. She's missed 3 weekends since that letter. Renters are not vetted, and they are told by the owner to say they are relatives or friends should code compliance show up. What other business tells their customers to lie about their product? Regarding hotel tax, the city hopes to receive, well, that's not only pie in the sky, but a sum zero gain. Typical STR owners, jump from platform to platform to avoid being detected by cities. In addition, websites on the internet give them advice on avoiding paying fines and detections, as well as not paying hotel tax. While city staffing and enforcement capabilities are issues, a simple solution consisting of finding and shutting down some STRs, thus sending a message that the city would enforce the current STR ordinance could be used. Why would you possibly greenlight a business model that you already know the majority of the citizens don't want in their neighborhoods? When someone looks at homes for sale in Fort Worth, the presence of nearby STRs are not present in an enticement to the purchase of advertised 3-bedroom, 2-bath fenced single-family residence. Please do not give these people a blank check to wreck our neighborhoods. Crime, traffic, noise, take homes off the markets for families hoping to live in a neighborhood. It's a shame that we citizens have to come and ask the city council to leave neighborhoods as neighborhoods and not let STR operators turn them into sleazy business districts. This is what it's all about. Here we go. That's my visual. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sims. Our next speaker is James Sims, followed by Bob Willoughby.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and honorable city council members. I come before you tonight to speak in opposition to any change in the current city ordinance prohibiting short-term rentals.
125. Fort Worth, 6/21 to 6 p.m.
We'll pause your time just a second, sorry.
Chris, can you mute your mic? We have feedback.
Angela, was this the music you were talking about? Did she already leave? Oh, she's out talking. Okay, this is what it was. Okay. We're going to start Mr. Sims' time over, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. As I was saying, I come to you this evening to speak in opposition to any change in the current city ordinance prohibiting short-term rentals in single-family residential areas. My wife and I are both native Texans, have grown up on the east side of Fort Worth, and have lived in Hanley in Fort Worth at 6935 Craig Street for 50 years as of this coming 4th of July. We currently have 3 active STRs within 200 feet of our home, and we are not particularly pleased with them. We have filed 2 online zoning violation complaints. The STRs are still in operation. We are aware that the city staff has selected Deckard Technologies Incorporated to complete a, quote, initial short-term rental identification project in order to assist in a phased approach of enforcement. This study directed toward possible policy changes concerning STRs in the near future. I am not in favor of allowing STRs in any single-family residential area. This because short-term rentals are both undesirable and unnecessary. Undesirable insofar as they are not compatible with the very nature of single-family residential neighborhood, which is not designed to be a commercial-type enterprise. Unnecessary insofar as their primary and, in fact, only purpose is to make money for the STR owner. STRs add absolutely nothing to the fabric of the neighborhood and, in fact, detract from its sense of community. Any money possibly received by the city from occupancy taxes will in the end be a zero-sum game. On the other hand, I am in favor of keeping and enforcing the current ordinance prohibiting STRs in single-family residential areas. No STRs should be permitted unless a zoning change is approved for that property. The zoning change procedures will allow direct neighborhood input into consideration of any STR application. In any case, and under no circumstances, should a person or entity be allowed to own or operate more than one STR unit. Please keep and enforce the current short-term rental ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Our next speaker is Bob Willoughby, followed by Philip Nedford.
Not yet with the video. It's a short video, so we've got part video and part talking here. First thing I want to start off with this video is about how people are disengaged to come down here to council, okay? That's what I want to tell you. I was displeased how Mr. Firestone treated this person, so go ahead and play the video.
Bob, we'll bring you back up after this next speaker. They're going to fix your video first. You'll get to start your time over, okay?
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That'd be fine. If you start my time, that's
Okay.
fine.
Philip Nedford. And then we'll bring Bob back up, and then it'll be Marsha Wright after Bob.
Hello, I'm Philip Medford with the District of 26 of Texas. I am here because I hear that Fort Worth wants to do a gun buyback, and I feel like that would that Texas is slowly turning blue, that we are turning into California, and California has problems, just like Texas does. I think, everybody knows that every state has problems, but I don't want to see my state, Texas, turn into California, where criminals can run and commit crime and then get arrested and be out within 24 hours, like what's going on over there. I think everybody shouldn't ignore that. Come on. That's not smart. We need to stick to what the Founding Fathers said about the Second Amendment. There is a quote from George Washington that said, "Let's punish the criminal, not the citizen working hard for his..." Oh, shit, that's not a quote. It is, the very atmosphere of firearms everywhere and anywhere restrains evil interference. They deserve a place for good of all that's honored. Let's punish the criminal, not the citizen working hard for his family, making us like Florida. Let's punish the bad person, not the bad person. So I'm just here speaking against the gun buyback. It's not going to do anything. I'm going to tell you this right now, because they had that in California. And California, we had shootings in California this year. I'm against violence. And we had shootings in New York, in these Democrat-run cities. It's not going to help, because you're going to leave the good person defenseless, and the bad person's still going to illegally obtain the firearm. Like, come on. This should be common sense. A criminal doesn't follow laws when you pass them. That's why they're a criminal. Come on. But I want to thank you for your time, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nedford. Bob, we're going to bring you back up here. And Bob will be followed by Marsha Wright.
Okay, what I wanted to say about Mr. Firestone or council members, I believe a lot of times they do this stuff.
Give us just a second, Bob. I'm sorry. We're going to start times over here. Melissa's trying to do too many things at once. Bless her heart.
Are we up? Same win. Okay, ready? Okay, yeah. Okay, I believe council members do this only for their self-benefit to get reelected. Go ahead and play this, okay? Go ahead and play it.
renaming Fort Worth Alliance Airport within the city of Fort Worth as Perot Field Fort Worth.
I'm against the change for the Perot Airport. And
Citizens take the time without pay to come here to do their part as citizens should. But they are treated with no respect by the people that took an oath to serve the citizens. The man who signed up to speak did not count to the mayor or city council members. I thought Council Member Firestone was rude in his behavior. To this person who took the time to sign up, Council Member Firestone calling people to speak that did not sign up to speak was in bad taste.
So, of course, I'm going to put this forward with, great enthusiasm to approve, but I do see a couple of people in the back there, Mike Berry, Roger Venables.
Tom, yeah.
Mike, would you like an opportunity to comment at all or say anything? So as Mike's walking down, Mike is CEO of Hillwood, which is the Perot's company that has largely built the Alliance area.
Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to get that point out of the way. The second thing I wanted to talk about here is that I had a meeting with Mr. David Cook, the city manager, about our neighborhood association. John T. White is a very corrupt neighborhood association. And the one thing I've asked of Mr. Cook is to recognize a new neighborhood association, but I'm having a hard time getting an answer. It's taken a month. I feel like I'm getting smoke blowing up my shorts. I'm not kidding. This is ridiculous. All we're asking is to recognize a new neighborhood association in John T. White. Even the crooked ones can run for it, okay? If John T. White Neighborhood Association is legit, then they should open this. They have secret elections for the last 3 years. I've come down here and mentioned it. Does a council member, Gina Bibbins, say anything about that? Does anybody approach me saying, no, they shouldn't have secret elections. They should have open? No, no one approached me. So I finally got fed up for 3 years. Mr. Cook, we need an answer. Either you're going to recognize a new neighborhood association in John T. White that's voted by the neighbors there, or you're going to protect the one on the data bank that's on there now. It does not recognize the neighbors, but recognizes Gina Bibbins more than anybody. That's our problem. Council members are owning neighborhood associations. We want ours back so the neighbors run it, not the council member. Would you give us an answer, sir? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Marcia Wright, followed by Tony Perez.
Good evening. My name is Marcia Wright. I am from Fort Worth, and my district is District 7. I'd like to talk to you tonight about our current ordinance, which really is a very fair ordinance. It protects our residential housing stock. It protects the sanctity of Fort Worth's residential neighborhoods and the property rights of residents who bought their homes in reliance on it staying residential. The city ordinance states that you can rent your home in a residential neighborhood for a period of not less than 30 days. You can rent your home in a residential neighborhood. It just must be for a 30-day period. They just can't operate commercial lodging business in a residential neighborhood. And don't forget that STRs can operate in other parts of the city where commercial lodging businesses are appropriate land use. Short-term rentals are allowed in all of the mixed-use areas that we have in the city. If you have an overlay, they are probably allowed there. In farm-based zoning, they're allowed, and of course, they're allowed in all commercial areas. So number one, I'm asking you to keep the ordinance we have. Number two, rather than rewarding STR operators who have been going against the current law, let's use that data to improve enforcement of our current ordinance. Going forward, enforcement of the ordinance must be the most important thing we focus on. No more using no harm, no foul rule. The ordinance cannot withstand looking the other way. And with a new company possibly coming in here to help code enforcement, it should begin to work. So let's leave the current ordinance in place. Have code enforcement work to eliminate those using their rental property for short-term rentals in violation of the ordinance, then step back and look at the rest of the many questions that are still out there to solve. If you allow short-term rentals in residential areas, you will have let the genie out of the bottle and you will not be able to put it back in. Let's not rush into anything and make an irreversible mistake. Of the other cities that have let STRs come into their residential neighborhood, almost to the city, they are now trying to redo their ordinance. We have an edge. Let's not give up the edge. What's the hurry? It's a very complicated issue. Listen to your constituents who live in Fort Worth, not those who don't live in Fort Worth. I don't understand why our city would want to damage neighborhoods that are the heart and soul of our city with STRs so that someone who lives in California or Azle or Dubai can make an extra buck. Please take it slow and do it right.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Our next speaker is Tony Perez, and then Jeanette, you can try Susan Kenney, who I think is on the phone. Is Tony here? No? Jeanette, you want to try Ms. Kenney?
Ms. Kenney,
Hello?
please go ahead. You have
Yes.
3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Parker and City Council. My name is Susan Kenney, and I'm the president of the Park Glen Neighborhood Association. We're in District 4 in Fort Worth. Our board is strongly against short-term rentals in single-family units. Mayor Parker and City Council, please protect residential areas and continue to prohibit short-term rentals. Please consider what Dallas is contemplating, which is defining short-term rentals as lodging and allowing short-term rentals only where hotels and lodging are permitted. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Kenney. Do you want to try for Jessica Reinch? Is she available? Maybe not. Layla Talley? You handed me this list, Jeanette. Is this the only ones that are available? Okay, I'm sorry. Layla Talley then.
Hello, hi. I'm Layla Talley. Good evening. I'm Layla Talley, and I live in District 6, Wedgewood. I'm here to discuss the Census smart water meters. I'm with a group of ratepayers who did not give permission to these mandated services of data harvesting and their added exposure to electrosmog from these Census smart meters. We had mailed a certified notice of liability to Chris Harder in April of 2021, which clearly stated that we do not consent. Last month, the Census smart water meter was forcibly installed with police presence after a calm no. In 2018, the World Health Organization completed new testing and found that radio frequency radiation, in fact, is a class 1 carcinogen. Smart meters should never be forced onto customers. The technician shared that people don't want this. These ratepayers were expressing their God-given freedom of choice. According to our Coronet electrosmog meter, the Census smart water meter radiation emits through the wall and into our 2 front rooms. A retired physicist from the federal government's chart illustrates reproductive harm, general cancer, and brain cancer from this level of radiation. At several spikes a minute, this also causes sleep disturbances. Encryption is not protecting our water usage data. According to a professional hacker, wireless smart meters are the easiest to hack into, even with encryption. The Texas law says that smart meter data belongs to the customer, and the customer decides who to share it with. I believe when a utility refuses to stop this data harvesting, it is a violation of the 4th Amendment. I call these smart meters behavior modification technology. All ratepayer water usage data is now stored on the wireless cloud. Data harvesting is creating a warming effect on our planet. Access to wireless cloud services will have the same carbon footprint as adding 4.9 million cars to the roads. This is not just a meter. We want this data harvesting, cancer and miscarriage causing expensive product immediately uninstalled from the water meter box. A simple purchase order for a brand new analog meter can be executed and installed instead. This is our only source of running water from the Fort Worth Water Department. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Paul Mellinger.
Paul?
Mayor and council. Yeah, I'm ready. Okay. Mayor and council, my name is Paul Mellinger. I live at 3121 Liscombe and am the president of South Hemp Hill Heights Neighborhood Association. Having been taught, if you complain, try and offer suggestions. And this I would gladly do, just not while I'm being kind. First, my thanks to Council Beck and Catherine Smith for their invaluable assistance in this matter. Let me provide setting for the activity my neighbors will cover more specifically. Shaw Street serves as a boundary between Shaw Clark and South Hemp Hill Heights neighborhoods, so we work together. 1011 and 1003 West Shaw are located on the south side near Hemphill and Berry, within 200 feet of Our Lady of Victory. 1011 West Shaw is less than 500 feet from George Clark Elementary, which received funding for sidewalk installation improvements in the Safe Routes to School program. In addition, 1011 sits 600 feet from Capps Park, where the city has recently invested about $150,000 to $200,000 HUD bottle block dollars, attracting ever greater numbers of park regulars. Need I say more? A lot of our young children walk this street, rather they used to. About a year ago, I was contacted about escalating issues and concerns regarding 1011 West Shaw, and was informed these problems had already been going on for a couple of years, and that calls, emails, complaints had been and were regularly being made to non-emergency, code, NPO, PD, all costing the city money. What is this? No electricity and no water, but people were living there. These neighbors here tonight asked for help, and some to this day were still afraid to do anything. This is how our neighborhoods fall apart. For the December 2021 Building and Standards hearing on 1011 West Shaw, I listened to testimony from the owner's daughter stating that her mother, the actual owner, had been in long-term care some years back, and that her house and property will be taken as repayment for the Medicaid Estate Recovery Program. The owner passed away in February, and now we wait for the state to take possession of this property, hoping to bring this nightmare to an end. As background, I learned the owner's grandson had moved into the house over 3 years ago, ostensibly to arrange for an estate sale. And yes, that was the start of what has brought me and some neighbors here tonight. Now my neighbors will tell what they have witnessed from then till now. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Leslie Shields.
Ms. Shields?
Hi, it's Leslie Shields. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm not really sure. But I'm a resident of West Meadowbrook, where I'm involved in the neighborhood board. I have to make that clear. I am speaking on behalf of myself and not them. When our board discussed this issue, we found that it was short-term rentals was a very generationally divided issue. Many of the younger families in our group use Airbnb and short-term rentals when they travel throughout the U.S. and the world, making it a better setup for families, having bedrooms for babies, and having it be more affordable. So I wanted to be sure that someone that lives in a neighborhood supported STRs. I think it's a really good opportunity for small businesses. By zoning them only to commercial or mixed-use zones, it could become a larger barrier to entry, whereas a residential mortgage can provide an opportunity, and I know two in particular, single moms who run short-term rentals to provide income to their families. So because we are regular users of them, and I believe that it will continue to bring more events to the Fort Worth area, there just aren't enough hotels. And this is a need with the setup with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen for travelers, and without allowing small businesses or families to have these in affordable residential areas, corporations are going to take those, they're going to fill the need. And so, again, I support short-term rentals. I have talked to the Fort Worth Hosts organization and know that they are offering education and totally support permitting and regulations. And maybe it's one permit per one owner. So we keep it to small business owners and not corporations. But I'm interested to see the results on the data and hope that the city will have an open mind to continue some short-term rentals within Fort Worth neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ramirez Lopez.
My
Mr.
name is
Lopez?
Ramirez Lopez. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
So I live at 1704 Oakland Boulevard, and I am in support of allowing short-term rentals. I have a family of 5 with 2 small children and have used short-term rentals numerous times, both domestically and internationally. So if you have ever traveled with any children under 2, that is a tough feat by itself. But allowing to have a whole home for where the kids can walk around and not be a nuisance to your neighbor in a hotel is great. And some of the other residents had spoke about neighborhoods being destroyed by short-term rentals. I would argue that if you look at West 7th, commercial properties are going to destroy neighborhoods anyway because of the need to put more people in places. You could say that short-term rentals offer a safe haven for lodging in single-family homes, but like Ms. Shield has said, I do believe it's a generational thing with most older folks not using short-term rentals. They use more traditional lodging and haven't had the benefit of staying in one. So that is my opinion on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last caller is Jessica Reinch on the phone, and go ahead, Jessica.
Yes, I'm here. May I start?
Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Jessica Reinch. I live at 1729 South Adams Street in Fort Worth. I was born and raised in Arlington, a TCU graduate, and a resident of Fort Worth. I am here to speak to you about my experience with short-term rentals. I am not here to make generalizations, use scary hyperboles, or to try to speak for others. I want to share my story with you. I always wanted to live in one of those beautiful homes of Fairmount. I was lucky enough to purchase one in 2020, and I quickly rented out the garage apartment to a young girl who had just had a baby and needed to be able to walk to work. Now I could afford the mortgage without a roommate. This house has mother-in-law suites, and I thought, what if my guest bedroom could pay my electric bill? That would be so helpful. So I did my research and decided to Airbnb one of the mother-in-law suites. To my surprise, it took off. I would use my lunch breaks to clean the suites and set out fresh cupcakes from Stir Crazy Baked Goods on Magnolia and a copy of Fort Worth Weekly for my guests. I fell in love with hosting and sharing my home, so I kept going. I rented out another room, and I started paying my tenant to clean the suites. Then my boyfriend and I purchased the duplex behind us. This property was dilapidated, broken and boarded up windows, and a horrible yard. It is now restored to its historic glory. We Airbnb'd our garage apartment and one side of the duplex, and we hired our tenant on full-time as our cleaning lady and moved her into the duplex with a significant rent reduction. She monitors that property to ensure are respectful and follow the rules, as do I on my property. My neighbors know I have STRs and thank me for how well I keep the yards, how I pick up trash up and down the streets because I want our streets to be beautiful, not just for my guests, but because I'm proud of my neighborhood. I've heard the negative comments about STRs, and in any area of business or life, there will be people that do things well and people that don't. I believe in hosting responsibly, caring for my community, and recommending my favorite small businesses. I am big on safety and have never once felt unsafe due to my guests. If anything, when my boyfriend travels, I feel safer knowing there are people I've spoken with many times that same day, close by. From parents of TCU students that stay with me because I'm an alumni, to medical staff that stay with me because they can walk to JPS, we are just people helping people. They stay with me because they want to feel like they belong in Fort Worth. I will be saying this. I have implemented game-changing software systems, built warehouses, and created jobs with my 15 years of corporate work. But what I am most proud of to date is the 650-plus glowing reviews I have received for providing people a wonderful place to stay in one of the best neighborhoods in Fort Worth. I look forward to paying local taxes and appropriate fees necessary to continue to be an ally and supporter of
Thank you,
Fort Worth.
Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jim Veeland. Jim will be followed by Carolyn Meyer.
Hi, my name is Jim Veeland. I live on Carlton Avenue in Arlington Heights. My wife and I have been there for 35 years. The city has purchased 11 homes on Carlton and Western because of a flooding problem. And this has been an ongoing issue for years. They've worked hard on it. The stormwater people have worked hard on it. And they've been responding to neighbors based on how to dispose of these properties, and the disposition is coming up soon. And it's boiled down to putting this out to bid and selling 9 of the 11 lots or houses that the city owns to one developer. And their options are to elevate these houses or tear them down and build new ones. The new information that's come out on this recently is that these new finished floor elevations are way up there. And there's a photograph there of one of the city-owned homes with the new finished floor elevation marked with pink tape, with an adjacent home that's gonna not be affected by this finished floor change. So you can imagine how dramatically different that's gonna make this neighborhood. So I'm here to say, please, based on this new information, can the property owners that are directly impacted by this project have a say in how it's disposed of? Because the other option is it being green space and stormwater retention, which helps alleviate the problem, whereas new houses or just picking the houses up does nothing for it. So that's what my request is to please reconsider, based on this new information, that the property owners who are going to be affected, their property values be affected by this, have more say in whether it goes to a developer or not.
Thank you, Jim. You may already know Sammy Root really well in Councilmember Firestone's office, but if you don't, she's your girl. You might, okay. And I got myself out of order. Here we go. Carolyn Meyer, followed by Russell Fuller.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name is Carolyn Meyer. I reside in Council District Number 5. I am here to speak about the short-term rental issue, and I'm here to speak in support of all the other speakers who are urging the City Council to preserve the current protections for neighborhoods found in the ordinances that ban short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods. Short-term rentals destroy the very fabric of residential communities by replacing long-term residents whom neighbors know and trust with a parade of total strangers. And unlike hotels, STRs have no staff on site to control bad behavior. One of the myths that short-term rental front groups propagate is that short-term rentals are primarily mom-and-pop businesses, with homeowners renting out spare rooms to add a few dollars of income. That may have been how short-term rentals started, but that's not the nature of the short-term rental business now. First, Airbnb and like businesses are multi-billion-dollar enterprises. Second, the owners of homes listed on those 2 platforms alone are typically commercial enterprises, not local residents. The neighborhood associations worked with 2 expert data sources that focus on the STR industry, and they tell us that only 33% of hosts of short-term rentals in Fort Worth have self-identified as living in Fort Worth. Further, 56.2% of those hosts have multiple listings within Fort Worth. In short, it is out-of-town commercial enterprises which mostly reap the profits from short-term listings in Fort Worth, while it's the citizens of Fort Worth who suffer all the headaches and the heartaches. So we are asking, please, please do not take any action that would undercut our current protections, excuse me, so that that are currently found in our ordinances that protect neighborhoods and bans rentals of less than 30 days in residential neighborhoods. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolyn. Our next speaker is Russell Fuller, followed by Michael Moore.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Rusty Fuller, President of the North Fort Worth Alliance. Thanks for the opportunity to bring these issues before you in this public meeting. The members of the North Fort Worth Alliance have voted unanimously to oppose the presence of short-term rentals in residential areas. You're hearing from individuals tonight on that point. You should have received correspondence from our Vice President supporting this position and the issue on which I'm about to speak. Tonight, we want to address the lack of personnel, training, and funding to enforce the current rules regarding illegal short-term rentals, no less rules that may increase the number of such lodging establishments. We want you to remedy that situation in the next and future budget cycles. This includes both code compliance and the Fort Worth Police Department. In various discussions with staff, we have information that indicates that code compliance lacks the resources to pursue every report of a short-term rental and must concentrate its efforts only on, quote, nuisance, unquote, properties. This is unsatisfactory, as we point out in the Vice President's letter. This is unsatisfactory and must be remedied, not by shuffling priorities within that very important department, but by increase of funding for personnel and training and support. In the case of the police department, the city is more than 100 officers short of the staffing goal. For calls for neighborhood disturbances, as we have heard, are of lower priority to other crimes being committed. So when conditions of higher priority crimes occur, the neighborhoods have little hope of obtaining assistance and remediating the situation in a timely manner. We want to emphasize that when you adopt a program or ordinances, you have to support all aspects of that program. We are proud to be part of a city that continues to make progress from better to best.
Thank you, Rusty. Our next speaker is Michael Moore, followed by Thomas Koski.
Good evening, Mayor Parker and all of our elected officials and citizens of Fort Worth. I am Michael Moore, and I reside at 1412 Lindsay Street, Fort Worth, Texas, in the historical Stop 6 neighborhood, District 5, led by Ms. Gina Bibbins. I'm here in opposition to short-term rentals for the simple reason that in our neighborhood, there's not a day that goes by that I don't get a call from an investor wanting to buy my property. And these are not people who live in my area. They live out of state. They want to purchase property in typically historic Black communities where they feel that they can get the best value for their bucks. But they're going to turn those homes into rental properties, permanent rental properties. Well, the city has finally shown a little love toward historic Stop 6, and we're no longer treated like a stepchild. Our community is rebuilding. I live there because I choose to live there. I'm in the home that my mother built by choice because I wanted to be a part of the community that I grew up in. I hope that this community will offer first-time home buyers or people who want to own properties to live in my neighborhood. Typically, no realtor ever shows Stop 6 to people who move into the city. Some of you have never visited my part of town, but it's home to me. These properties pose a threat because they are going to be turned into party houses. There are two properties on my street that many home buyers have attempted to purchase. Those properties have fallen into the hands of a grandson of deceased parents, and now they're wanting to put those properties up for short-term rentals. These properties are going to turn into party houses. We already have a problem with shots being fired at night putting our families at risk. We already are under-policed in terms of getting a proper response. So these properties pose a great threat to the quality of life that we're trying to reestablish in historic Stop 6. So if the city is going to allow, then please consider putting restrictions in place that will discourage corporate dollars from purchasing these properties. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pastor Moore. Our next speaker is Thomas Sterling Koski, followed by Shannon Ross.
Mayor Parker and council members, but most importantly, taxpayers, citizens, and neighbors behind me. Originally, it's interesting because none of the people behind me are afraid of me. None of you are. But notably, several members of the council are afraid of me and speakers that come here regularly. You think about that. I wanted to do a year in review, which is the first year for most of the council members. They were elected for a variety of reasons, but the most important one was to follow the rule of law, to follow the law. There are a lot of examples in the last week, just what happened at last week's city council. But a microcosm of the problem with the current city council, including its new members, is what happened just yesterday. For those of you that didn't notice, I have on a First Amendment shirt. We all have the same rights under the First Amendment. There are 5 elements. All of you, or most of you, are practicing a couple of them tonight. Free speech and freedom of assembly and freedom to redress your government. But yesterday, a citizen journalist, one that has been arrested repeatedly on the street for interfering with the police, was arrested again and assaulted by a Fort Worth police officer. He was also charged with resisting arrest because, of course, that makes it a higher class offense. But picture, if you will, the man in the back of the room that works for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. If he was driving down the road and he saw a Fort Worth police officer harassing a homeless person and he stopped to film that and potentially get a lead or do a story, and the officer violated his First Amendment rights, which specifically in the Fifth Circuit Court opinion says that the people have a right to film public officials and law enforcement in the course of their duties. Do you know where that language came from? Specifically, the Fifth Circuit opinion against the city of Fort Worth and their police department, and Philip Turner specifically. What happened yesterday to Manuel Mata, when you find out the specific facts, is much worse. He's currently facing 5 charges of interference by 5 different Fort Worth police officers. One officer who didn't like him filming, Sergeant Hoffman, followed him on his bicycle. That means Manuel was on his bicycle, and that officer hit him with his police car. When Manuel filed a complaint, Officer Hoffman, a couple months later, is seen on his body camera planting cocaine on Manuel. Now Manuel has a serious arm injury. And if you think that Philip Turner winning a $1 million case against the city of Fort Worth, this is going to be small potatoes. We keep talking about police accountability. We keep talking about the fact that the police are not accountable in our city. 3 of the city council members were elected specifically to work on police accountability.
Thank you, Thomas.
And here we are.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Shannon Ross, followed by Pam Hudson.
Hi.
Hi there.
My dad and I moved to Hanley over a decade ago, and I own several short-term rentals, most of which were eyesores or drug houses when we purchased them. We didn't intend to become landlords. We simply wanted to clean up the neighborhood. We tried renting long-term, and it was a disaster. Tenants didn't pay, they destroyed things, and then they refused to leave. The eviction process was expensive and very stressful. I haven't had one problem since I switched to short-term rentals. I now have the upper hand legally. They don't pay, they won't, and if they don't pay or if they won't leave. Hotels aren't a good fit for everyone. Our short-term rentals have housed cancer patient families, people with compromised immune systems, families who are flooded from their houses, and they all need different. We've also had stock show exhibitors and multi-generational families. I could go on and on with the people that have rented our homes, and I'm proud of it. I've been able to employ neighbors as cleaning crews, landscape and maintenance workers, and they can even walk to work. These are people who are now in fear of losing their livelihoods. I did some research, and in the 3 square blocks around my home that I live in, there were 14 owner-occupied homes, 16 long-term rentals, and 6 short-term rentals, and 2 vacant houses. In the past 3 years, there's not been one call related to any of the 6 STRs on the block, but there have been multiple calls on the others. Gunshots, 4 drug raids, over a dozen code violations for grass, trash, etc., and 37 calls for noise violation for just 1 house in 1 year alone. Not any of the STRs. You can see that's not the problem in my neighborhood. If the city eliminates these, those currently operating will be turned into long-term rentals, not owner-occupied homes like people want. I'm bombarded daily with calls as well for investors asking to buy my properties, never families, only investors. I personally know 3 groups of investors from California who are buying up as many houses as they can in DFW, and they have no interest in short-term rentals at all. They want to remodel them quickly and flip them. Eliminating STRs and hoping for a Mayberry-type neighborhood of the past is unrealistic. We'll have more absentee long-term landlords and owner-financed houses at astronomical interest rates. I don't see how that's a benefit to any of our cities. The proponents and opponents all want the same thing for our neighborhoods. We want clean, safe, quiet places to live and an increase in our investments, our homes. We want rules governing how STRs operate to weed out the few bad apples there are. Registering and taxing is a good start. Airbnb horror stories are a recurring theme, and you can look up high school horror stories or shopping mall horror stories. The reason these are horror stories is because they're isolated incidents. They're not the norm. I've stayed in numerous STRs and have never experienced anything remotely horrendous. I've referred to everything that's been a fact, a statistic, or my personal experience, not something I've seen or heard on the internet that might possibly happen.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Our next speaker is Pam Hudson, followed by David Mendez.
My name is Pam Hudson. I live in Fort Worth in District 3. I moved to Fort Worth in 1990, straight out of college. I later moved to Burleson for 20 years. And in 2017, my daughter deliberately asked us to move to Fort Worth so she could attend a particular Fort Worth ISD school. Our older son had not attended a Fort Worth ISD school, but we moved, and she excelled. She had a very good experience. She's gone off to college, and we thought we would always move back to Johnson County to the wide open spaces, but we've come to love the neighborhood of Fort Worth that we live in Foster Park, and we have no intention of leaving. I'm here tonight not because I support the current ordinance, nor do I support the situations that some of the speakers have described, where people came in and remodeled and put in 7 bedrooms and made it be basically a rent a pad kind of night. I didn't realize that was even a factor. But what I'm here to talk about is the support of controlled, desirable short-term rentals. And why is that? If I did not support that, I would be a hypocrite. I travel all over this country with my family, and everywhere I go, we stay in a short-term rental. My family is in Alabama. My husband's family is in Iowa. We had 2 very active children that we raised. Our son played golf all over Texas and the Midwest. Everywhere we went, we rented a short-term rental. Why is that? We had the ability to spread out. We had our own space. We could have grandparents join us. We weren't relegated to a hotel room where we had to go our separate ways and only saw each other the next morning for breakfast. Like I said, we've stayed in short-term rentals in many states across the country, and we always enjoyed the ability to be part of the community, to get to know the neighborhoods, and I've had other family members to do the same. People choose vacation destinations and work destinations based on the opportunity for options. People are more mobile than they used to be. People are able to work remotely. They're able to take their children on school and academic trips and still work remotely. That wasn't possible in the past. And what accommodates families best in many cases is short-term rentals. I know a number of people that come to this community from my family or friends or network. They're coming to the stock show. They're going to go to a show at Dickey's Arena. They're coming to go to a TCU football game. We have family from Iowa State that come to watch their team play the Horned Frogs, bless their heart. But they choose to stay at short-term rentals because then they can congregate together, enjoy the back patio, have a barbecue. It's not just visitors that choose short-term rentals, there's also residents. If you're on any of the social media sites, not named Tanglewood Moms, you might have seen the frantic plea, my house has been flooded, I've got 4 kids and 2 dogs, does anyone have a back cottage where I can stay for 2 or 3 weeks? Or you've got the case of they bought a home and they need to move, they have 2 or 3 week time span before they can move into their new home and they need a place to stay. Fort Worth needs to provide options and opportunities for both their residents and guests. Let's come up with a plan that makes sense for everyone.
Thank you, Pam. Our next speaker is David Mendez, followed by Cindy Bowling.
Mayor Council, David Mendez, Fort Worth, Texas, speaking on behalf of Northwest Neighborhood Alliance. According to the last census, the Northwest area has 170,000 residents. That is a lot of residents. That's a lot of voters. And that's a really good, important statistic to remember. Something I wanted to bring up, Mayor, because you were not at the last meeting I was at, 33% of all homes sold last year were sold to corporations. Those are homes that are no longer in the pool to be used by Fort Worth families. The majority of those are going to be rental properties. Some of them will probably be short-term rentals. And what I'm here today to speak about is not expanding or changing the short-term rental policy that Fort Worth currently has. Keep it as it is, crack down on illegal short-term rentals, and focus on families. 1/3 of all those homes sold last year will no longer be occupied by families. They can't be owned. They can be rented, and that's great when you want to rent something. But you want to put down roots and live in Fort Worth. And Fort Worth has always been for families, for people who want to be part of this community. Neighborhood cohesion is so important in Fort Worth that a large number of short-term rentals can break that apart of any neighborhood, even the strongest, like Marine Creek Ranch, where I'm from. I'm fortunate enough to live in an HOA that has a policy against short-term rentals, but there are so many neighborhoods out there, long-term established neighborhoods that are the heart of Fort Worth, that were built by Fort Worth families, and they want to keep living and enjoying those neighborhoods. And keeping that neighborhood cohesion together means families need to be in homes, not renters, not short-term renters. We need families. You pull out that many homes from a pool and then claim that there's a housing shortage in Texas. Well, there is a housing shortage because they're all being brought up by corporations and being used for other purposes other than families. The other thing we have to think about is safety. Police and code are taxed. They are too far stretched to enforce the policies that you want them to enforce. They need to do their current job well before they start expanding on managing short-term rentals. Code compliance is stretched so thin, they need immediate help to do their current job, not short-term rental monitoring. The police are having to expand to having to double up on areas. Fire is having to go to mandatory overtime. These are problems that need to be fixed before you think about any short-term rentals in neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Our next speaker is Cindy Bowling, followed by Lauren Brady. Cindy here? I thought I saw her, maybe not. No, we'll come back if she walks in. Next speaker, Lauren Brady, followed by Christine Torres.
Good evening, Council. My name is Lauren Brady. I'm a resident of Arlington, and I'm the president of the Fort Worth Short-Term Rental Alliance. I've also been an STR host in Fort Worth since 2017. I'm taking my time tonight to introduce you to a few of my guests. The intention here is to give a face, name, and story to the types of people who choose STR homes in Fort Worth. This is the Knighton family. Their family went to Dallas for a Children's Craniofacial Association retreat for their 18-month-old son, Hunter, who has Treacher-Collins syndrome, a rare syndrome that is hardly known amongst doctors around the world. It is so rare that they're traveling halfway across the country from South Carolina to meet other families with TCS. Visiting in STRs not only provides an affordable place to stay, but also a place where they can control Hunter's food by cooking their own meals. This is the Peterson family. They're longtime Arlington Heights homeowners. They chose my STR for a few weeks during a home remodel on their 1920s bungalow. It was important to them to stay close to their community and home while displaced. During the birth of their son recently, they were thankful to have STR options in their Arlington Heights neighborhood as out-of-state family came to help out and celebrate the new addition to the family. This is Dr. Rita Kosnick. She holds a PhD in Organizational Behavior and Strategy from Northwestern University. She lives in San Antonio and travels to Fort Worth monthly to work as an adjunct professor in TCU's Neely School of Business. She chooses STR homes when she travels because she feels like they are safer, quieter, and more like her own home while she's away from her family. This is the Pleasant family. They came to Fort Worth from Englewood, New Jersey in 2019 after the death of a family member revealed an unknown, long-lost family member and living in Fort Worth. They needed a safe home base for their time in the city while having a space to meet, spend time with, and learn about this newly found branch of their family tree. They come back annually now to visit and stay in my home. This is the Verdier family. Chelsea and Chris Verdier chose my STR home in 2018 as they began to travel to Fort Worth monthly for fertility treatments. I began to know them personally and cheered them on each month with small gifts and gestures. They tragically lost their twin girls, Hazel and Eleanor, in 2019 at 26 weeks. I began hosting them again as they worked hard to have their son, Oliver, and I look forward to being part of their next journey to give Oliver a sibling as they're now like family to me. And speaking of family, this is Nancy Johnson, or as I call her, Nana. Nana is a dear family member of mine. She has been in my life since I was 12. She's a Fort Worth native who grew up on the Southwest Side. She was permanently disabled in a near-fatal car accident. In 2012 and 2014, I purchased a small 1930s home for her in Arlington Heights, where she lives today. I STR the guest home on this property to keep her rent low and manageable and to invest money into adapting the home to her changing physical needs. Nana has lived with an STR in her backyard for literally 5 years and has never had a single issue with a guest. In fact, they often bring up her trash cans and water her plants for her. When STRs are banned, so is my family's ability to keep her in a home that is safe. When STRs are banned, so is the option for families and guests like these to stay in Fort Worth. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Our next speaker is Christine Torres, followed by Margaret Calivas.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Christine Torres, and I live at 3229 College Avenue. I'm so thankful for Elizabeth Beck's help this morning in taking care of our issues that code compliance and NPO could not do for more than 2 years. Our struggle with 1003 and 1011 West Shaw has been very hard for the neighborhood. Our up-and-coming neighborhood was pushed back due to these two houses that were allowed to break all the rules. Now maybe we can get back to where we were as a great neighborhood, but we will continue to need code compliance on our NPO to stay on any issues that should arise. Again, at the 1003 and 1011 West Shaw. We still fear the 1011 Shaw resident will lay low like once before and then start up again. Going forward, I would suggest code compliance step up their codes and enforce them sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. Our next speaker is Margaret Calivas. Margaret, you have to tell me how to pronounce it, so I know I messed it up. Margaret's followed by Emily Braun.
It's Clevis, but
There
I
you go.
answered anything.
Okay.
I've heard them all.
Go ahead, Margaret.
Mayor Parker and City Council, I just want to start off by saying that we really appreciate all that you guys do to serve our city and our communities. It really doesn't go unnoticed. My husband is a Texan, raised in Fort Worth, and now we live in Carter Riverside. And we've been here for 4 years and love every second of it. We absolutely love Cowtown. I work in downtown for a large public accounting firm, and my husband works for Lockheed Martin, and we're all in Fort Worth fans. We live, we work, we patron local shops in Fort Worth. We love attending Ray Street events. Our favorite coffee shop is from Vaquero, or our favorite coffee is Vaquero, and we hit our local home improvement store all the time. So we're here in support of STRs as residents of Carter Riverside. While we love our neighborhood, we also recognize the need for some investment in our homes and in our neighborhood, and that's where I come in support of STRs. I've attended various meetings with the Fort Worth Short-Term Rental Alliance and have listened to stories from folks who live and breathe Fort Worth, folks like those in the North Side area that have put hundreds of thousands of dollars into their homes on their street to STR. What I've learned from these people is that they're locals and that they love Fort Worth and they love the culture and the history, and even more than that, they love their neighbors. They're taking the opportunity to invest in their own financial futures by having passive income that's more lucrative than long-term renting while beautifying their neighborhoods. By taking the opportunity to look at the education provided by the Fort Worth Short-Term Rental Alliance, I've come to understand that the businesses of short-term rentals is all in the first impression. Hosts and owners of STRs can only run a successful business by providing a wonderful first impression to guests. What does this mean for the neighborhoods that they operate in? Their lawns are meticulous. The trash around their homes and on the street is cleaned up. You walk to the front door and are often welcomed with patio furniture and welcome signs, and you open the door to a beautifully maintained home. As I learned this about STR hosts and the additional effort that they go through to set up and equip their homes to be maintained and safe, I realize how well prepared they are to diagnose an issue with a guest before it even happens. This doesn't even mention the fact that STR platforms are very stringent in vetting their guests. All this to say, I'm a neighbor, I'm a resident of Fort Worth and of Carter Riverside. My husband and I love our home and we love our community. We talk about how it's a perfect city to raise kids and how we want them to understand what it really means to have a community that's willing to go out of their way to show their Texas pride. Owners of STRs have a stake in the community and they have a stake in their property values, even more so than our long-term renter neighbors who don't have that same stake in the homes that they live in. We would fully support an STR home in the house right next door to us, and I actually would welcome it because it means that we can show the visitors of our great state and our amazing city all that Fort Worth has to offer, and the owners who host these guests are first in line to help beautify the neighborhood and solve problems that face our communities because honestly, their livelihoods depend on it.
Thank you, Margaret. Emily Braun, followed by Casey Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councilmen and councilwomen for allowing me to speak today, and especially thank you to Councilwoman Beck for taking care of our neighborhood situation. I'll keep this update brief. I'll share about my background, the experiences with House 1003 and 1011 West Shaw, and possible suggestions. I'm the acting vice president of the Shaw Clark Neighborhood Association, a director at a local Chick-fil-A. I'm pursuing my master's in counseling, but most importantly, I'm a wife and a mom to 2 kids who are 8 and 4. And I share this because I want to demonstrate my commitment to Fort Worth, and I really care about this community. We live at 1001 West Shaw Street, which is right next to the lovely house of 1003 West Shaw. As my colleagues have already shared, the urgent need to stop the undignified and unsafe living conditions with these 2 houses, I will share my experience living next to 1003 West Shaw Street. This house is rented to families, but the most recent family did not care for the house, and they did not care for their dogs and would let them roam the streets. The dogs looked uncared for, particularly with their fur, and they were not responsible for taking care of those dogs. For this past month, we have not been able to live at our house because of a flea infestation. While this is embarrassing to admit, I was outraged when I discovered it was because of my neighbors. The professional exterminator said that this was one of the worst that he had ever seen. It took 3 professional exterminations and 2 personal floggings to finally clear those fleas. This meant that my family has not been able to live at home due to the unkept nature of my neighbor's house. All I ask is that we put a stop to these undignified living situations and consistently follow through on these reports. I appreciate your support in keeping our Fort Worth safe.
Thank you, Emily. Next speaker is Casey Hansen, followed by Carol Peters.
Hello, Council. Hello, Mayor. That's a little loud. All right, my name is Casey Hansen, and I am a resident of Fort Worth and a small business owner. I own short-term rentals myself, and I am a short-term rental property management business. I work with multiple local property owners that use their rentals as supplemental income for their lifestyle, in addition to a retirement plan, because we all know Social Security is not going to do the thing. One owner in North Fort Worth has an airplane hangar that is rented out to flight school students to store their planes in. He runs his accounting business out of it, and he rents it out on Airbnb. Yes, it's an investment property, but it will ultimately serve as his retirement plan when he is ready to sell his accounting business. Another local owner in here, Dickie Zarina, likes to travel. She uses one side of her duplex to rent out on Airbnb, and that way she can travel at her leisure and come back home to the backside of her duplex. So not only does the consumer side of short-term rentals feed our local economy and fellow small businesses, it is also feeding its residents to support their present and their future livelihood. When making the consideration of short-term rentals in our neighborhood, most people are concerned with the liability portion as well as their property value, which rightfully so. As a licensed insurance agent, I get this question more often than any other question. I would consider, though, what is the damage of a 12-month-long tenant versus a damage of a weekend-long tenant? So what's the worst-case example? Parties, which is what most people's concerns are. Fair enough. Short-term rental platforms like Airbnb have a strict no-party policy. It is in the property's owner's best interest to not allow parties either, but we know that they could possibly happen. However, consider that the moment a noise complaint occurs, the weekend guest is escorted off the property and the home is put together in a for sale type condition to be listed to other renters. However, in my own neighborhood, the renter 2 doors down from me has no less than 6 half broken down cars in the driveway, multiple gatherings in the front yard during the week, and accumulates trash and junk literally as we speak. So what can be done? They're a long-term renter, they're allowed to be there. So consider also that we're speaking of the extreme and not the norm. My normal guests consist of couples coming into town for a wedding, working professionals coming in for a conference, or families being displaced due to home renovations. These are not crime-ridden strangers. They're everyday folks just like you and me. If we plan policy around the extremes, then we are hurting our local economy and our fellow neighbors. So I ask that you consider all Fort Worth residents when deciding what short-term rentals mean for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carol Peters, followed by George Charles.
Thank you, Mayor Parker and members of the City Council for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm Carol Peters from Fort Worth, Texas, representing United Neighborhoods of Fort Worth. I live in District 8. I stand in support of the city's current ordinance regulating short-term rentals. I commend our city leaders' vision in crafting a policy that offers a path to new types of lodging while protecting single-family neighborhoods. Because of our ordinance, Fort Worth has not experienced the explosion of short-term rentals that has plagued other cities. In Fort Worth, short-term rentals may flourish in multi-use, commercial, and many other zoning schemes, but are not allowed in single-family neighborhoods. Fort Worth's approach has been validated by Dallas, which is moving towards a similar ordinance after a backlash from citizens fed up with short-term rentals disrupting neighborhoods. According to Inside Airbnb and other data mining sources, Fort Worth has between 1,600 and 1,700 short-term rentals. In comparison, Dallas has 6,000. Short-term rentals are operating throughout Fort Worth legally and illegally. Enforcement of the current ordinance has been hampered by a lack of resources and a registration plan allowing operators to fly under the radar. Contrary to what is portrayed by the industry, short-term rental operators are not usually local owners. And you have heard the statistics in a previous presentation. 56% of Airbnb hosts in Fort Worth have more than one listing. One Dallas-based host has 43 of its 230 Airbnb listings in Fort Worth. Also, 76% of the properties are entire homes or apartments, not homeowners renting out a room now and then to earn extra income. Neighborhood preservation is your #1 priority. Our citizens have just begun to realize that city could open the door to many hotels next door. Understanding and acceptance of an unfamiliar industry will take time, education, and conversation. Community engagement should be extended, held after the summer vacation season when most key parties are absent, and executed with transparency and patience. Otherwise, the council will appear to be just checking a box. My recommendation is to allow short-term rentals to grow in the zones where they are now allowed, which are expanding every day, then revisit any change in a few years. What Fort Worth is missing is robust enforcement and a solid registration scheme. Good policymaking is both an art and a science. Beware of the unintended consequences of poorly crafted and rushed policy. And I would like to speak for the older folks who referenced not liking STRs. I don't mind STRs at all, just not in my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Our next speaker is George Charles, followed by Joyce Torres.
My name is George Vernon Childs. My residence address is number 742901 Travis Avenue, Fort Worth. There can be no true rule of law unless equality under the law is preserved. Without that, the rule of law is perverted into the law being whatever the ruler says it is. This condition is both the primary weapon and reliable armor of a tyrant. I maintain that the mayor has demonstrated a contempt for equality under the law so blatant that as members of a certain ethnic group used to say, Ray Charles can see it. Her usual razor-sharp adherence to limits on public comment is suddenly exiled to Pluto when a public comment concerns financial gain for the mayor. I'm going to say that again, financial gain for the mayor. On February 8th, a person commenting in a zoning case switched topic to speak in favor of increased compensation for city council. This was met with a warm, welcoming smile, not a warning to stay on topic, followed by a threat of physical action by a city employee armed with a deadly weapon. If this is not a textbook example of corruption, what is? Last week, I witnessed the sickening spectacle of the mayor looking on approvingly as two ambassadors from the Grand Duchy of Hillwood were invited to speak on a resolution. One did. No speaker card, no clock ticking, stating direct rebuttal to what someone who had followed the rules had said. It was like watching a Warner Brothers cartoon scripted by George Orwell. Very good for showing us grubby little peasants how the sausage is really made. A letter from legal told Bob Willoughby that he was required to, quote, follow the duly adopted city council rules of procedure, unquote. If legal truly believes in equality under the law, it has a duty to the public to tell the mayor the same thing in writing, since she is clearly in need of being reminded that that also applies to her.
Our next speaker is Joyce Torres, followed by Donald Crosby.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name's Joyce Torres. I live in Hempel Heights, District 9. I'm here to talk about 1011 West Shaw Street. But first of all, I want to thank Elizabeth Beck and all those involved in the cleanup of Shaw Street this morning. Y'all did a great job. Unfortunately, the problem still exists, main problem, and that is the person that resides at 1011 West Shaw Street. He has wreaked havoc on our neighborhood, and as long as he is able to conduct business, he will continue to wreak havoc on our neighborhood. So I'm asking for help to resolve that problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. Our next speaker is Donald Crosby, followed by Bill Tatum.
Good evening, Council. Thanks so much for giving us the opportunity to come and speak with you tonight. I want to congratulate Councilman Blaylock on new appointment and appreciate, I'm also in the North Fort Worth area, up there in the Fossil Creek area, and glad to have you representing our area. I operate short-term rentals. I'm proud of that. I'm glad to do it. I provide a good service for folks that come in and stay in our wonderful city. I am a veteran. I am a former teacher for 10 years in the Fort Worth School District. I'm an orchestra director. Most people look at me and say, no, you can't be that. But I'm a professional cellist, and I am a father of 5. I provide for my family by giving a wonderful place for people to stay. I've had great reviews. I've had lots of people that have come and stayed in my home from Norway, from Germany, from the Philippines, from all over the United States, and they all seem to enjoy it. and they give me good reviews. And I would imagine that many of you have stayed in short-term rentals, as most of the folks here have stayed in short-term rentals before. They're a great opportunity for you to stay as a family and to spend time together rather than having to stay in a hotel, which is sometimes not really fitting for a family gathering. I am obviously in support of us changing the ordinance so that it really meets the needs of our city. I'm not one of these guys that feels like it's, just do whatever we want to and run hog wild in the wild, wild west and do whatever ordinance that, everybody uses their property for whatever they want. No, I don't believe that. I think that we need to find some kind of compromise between those that operate short-term rentals and those that don't want them in the area. You, council, have a very difficult job. You have to make that decision, and I know it's a thankless job, and I want to thank you all for working hard for our citizens of Fort Worth. We're grateful for you all to spend this time to come here, and you could be with your families. Thank you so much, and we hope that we'll come up with a good conclusion for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. Our next speaker is Bill Tatum, followed by Corrine Schutler.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. I've heard a lot of interesting things about short-term rental. I presently have a house at 9526 Watercrest, right adjacent to Lake Worth, and several of my neighbors are here with me, but I've heard a lot of interesting points of views about short-term rental that I really didn't know a lot about, but I can tell you if you have a short-term rental on the lake, you got a party house, and you got all types of problems. Partying all night long obviously goes with the beer. The individuals, they'll take their ski-doos, they park them in front of our boathouse. We have private property, do not come on, doesn't make any difference, they're still there. More interesting, my son, who hadn't been out at my lake house, he drove out there the other day, and he called me up and he said, "What's going on at the lake house?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, there was about 20 turkey buzzards out there." I said, "Turkey buzzards?" He said, "Yeah, they were all eating trash." So what happened was the people that had stayed there, usually Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever that combination will be, they leave on Saturday or Sunday or Monday. They take all their trash out. They put it in front of the house on the wrong side. Then the trash is not picked up till Tuesday. The turkey buzzards, the varmints, everything else comes in. You wouldn't believe how much trash that the neighbors had to pick up that was dispersed all over the neighborhood. It's an environmental health hazard. So I realize everything's unique to its own place. Watercrest is a really neat area, and we just need the protection of keeping people from coming out and making a mess out of our neighborhood. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. Next speaker is Corrine Schutler. I'm sorry.
Corey Schluter, but
thank you.
It's okay.
Oh, and Cassie Warren is next. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My name is Corey, District 5. I have lived in East Fort Worth since I was 2 years old, and I am here representing myself and my friends in my generation that are in support of short-term rentals. Those of us with small houses or apartments don't have the room to host family or friends when they come in from out of town. So we started booking short-term rentals for them, and it has been a huge blessing, especially if you have young kids or having grandparents come in from out of town. A lot of the time, it's just a much better fit. We're able to get together as a family. We can put the kids down for a nap and not have to worry about dividing up in a hotel. There were some chuckles when somebody mentioned that there weren't enough hotels, and we might just be thinking of downtown. Like I said, I live on the east side of Fort Worth, and there is only one hotel on the east side from Oakland to Arlington. There's one hotel. So when my husband and I went through IVF and we had his family come to visit, short-term rental was the only option for us. I have personally not stayed in a hotel for years, especially since having toddlers. And my family and friends from out of state have been able to live like locals. They've discovered new places to eat and shop off the beaten paths by staying in short-term rentals. In closing, I would like to say that the way that we travel now might not be like it was. We need options now for places to stay that are as diverse as the people staying in them. Thank you.
Thank you. Cassie Warren, followed by Patrick Gervil.
Hi, all. My name is Cassie Warren, and I first wanted to say thank you all. Like Dawn said, I know this is a thankless job, and maybe one day we can get y'all raised like you deserve. And I'm here in support of STRs. There's some people who couldn't sign up to speak, so could everyone who's in support please stand up? Thank you. I have 2 requests for you today. My first one is to make sure all the decisions that you make are not based on fear. I know you're gonna have a lot of people calling you. They're gonna say that STRs will mess up the fabric of their community. And they're gonna ask you if you'd be okay having an STR next to you in your house. If your knee-jerk reaction is to say no, I would ask you to think, am I making this decision and having this feeling based on fear, or is it based on facts? And I would warn you, as a leader, don't ever make a decision based on fear, because it's always the wrong decision. I have some examples. For example, when emails first came out, everybody thought that snail mail would be eliminated, but it wasn't. It just changed the way we used snail mail. The internet, everybody thought it's gonna eliminate books, it's gonna eliminate teachers, it'll change and eliminate the education system, but it didn't. It just changed the way we used it. It's the same way with STRs. It's not gonna eliminate our neighborhoods, it's not gonna ruin our neighborhoods. It would just give us the potential to change the use of our houses. My second request is that you trust that capitalism works. Right now, it's illegal to have a short-term rental in Fort Worth, but they are needed, and this has created a black market, as you all know, for STRs. If we would legalize them, however, and have regulations for them, at first my impulse was to think, oh my gosh, all of Fort Worth is gonna be a hotel. We'll have millions pop up. But then I started thinking about it more and praying about it, and I was like, no, because there's checks and balances. It's supply and demand, and capitalism does work. In closing, I know you guys work really hard to represent your districts, and that's why you guys are awesome. Trust your instincts, and we trust y'all, and we trust your reasoning, so ask yourself, do you want the right to be able to short-term rental your own property? And if the answer is yes, the answer is also yes for those non-squeaky wheels. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. Our next speaker is Patrick Gervil, followed by Rick Herring.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Gervil, not Gervil, but I live in District 7. I've been listening to everything all tonight, and it amazes me. We already have an ordinance against the short-term rentals. It's 23110-02-02-18. I'm one of the unfortunate ones that have a short-term rental next to me. Okay? It's not all of what everybody says it is. We get a constant turnover of people that invade my privacy, my family's privacy, my grandkids' privacy, my daughter's privacy. It's a constant struggle to get the trash taken out. People running down the street, dogs, people, when they rent the home, the dogs run all over the place. They don't pick up after themselves. The last rental they had the garbage. The next rental came in, threw the garbage in the back of their house. Well, my house sits above it, and I got to smell that lovely fragrance of trash, decaying. I have to take it out and put it in front. When I do call the owner, I get no reply. When I do see him when he stops by, maybe 10 minutes, he'll say, hey, I'm here to help you. But he's never there. It invades my privacy. You talk about if you would like it and invade your privacy. I have a dock on the lake. I can't go on it in the weekends. Why? Because there's people drinking beer, smoking dope, foul language, you name it. You wouldn't want it in your home or your neighbors. I understand the great stories I've heard tonight, but I'm telling you my story. And I think it's dead wrong. We already have it on the ordinance. I don't want some third party coming in and speaking for me. If you want to, let the people vote on it. But I don't believe a third party is the way to go on this deal. And I really do think, and I respect you for being here tonight, and I appreciate it, but I think something needs to be done because my privacy is being invaded. I pay enough taxes in Tarrant County alone, okay? It's one of the highest paid counties in the state. And I just feel like I'm being violated, my family's being violated, my neighbors are being violated because we don't know who these people are. It's a constant turnover. It's a hit or miss. You don't know who it is. I've heard all these beautiful stories about people, but the 30-day rule and them turning it over every weekend and weekend and weekend with a different group of people needs to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rick Herring, followed by Roy Barker. I don't see Rick anywhere. Rick's not here. Roy Barker? Is Roy here? No. Dave Schwart? Followed by Jared Roker.
Good evening, Mayor Parker and City Council. My name is Dave Schwarty. I reside in Arlington, Texas, but I'm a co-founder of the Texas Neighborhood Coalition. I practiced law for over 40 years. I was in-house counsel for 2 major North Texas corporations before I finally retired. Our primary mission at Texas Neighborhood Coalition is in helping neighborhoods avoid and then address the problems that inevitably arise whenever short-term rentals creep into residential neighborhoods. I've listened to the tales of woe here tonight, and I have to tell you, we hear exactly the same thing in every other community where city officials open the door to short-term rentals. And I'll sort of sum up the reactions I've heard. The people who make money off of them love them. Everybody else hates them because they have to deal with the consequences. I want to leave you with 4 key points tonight from the neighborhood perspective. First, you have short-term rental regulations that many cities across the state wish they had, because you have very specifically allowed them to operate in some areas, and you have very specifically prohibited from operating them in others. Second, the issues that you may be experiencing in Fort Worth with the growth of illegal short-term rentals is not because there's something wrong with the rules. It's because the rules have not been aggressively enforced. And I come here as a resident of Arlington to say, please do not make the mistake in thinking that short-term rental rules cannot be enforced. In Arlington, we've had rules in place for over 3 years. They banned short-term rentals in most residential neighborhoods. They allowed them in most of the city. That was not residential. We allowed them in some residential areas near Cowboy Stadium that wanted them, and they wanted them because they were a transitional area that needed some help. This compromise has worked, and I will tell you that our enforcement mechanisms in Arlington have worked. We have shut down a number of illegal operations of short-term rentals. We have citizens who work with code enforcement to assure that those regulations in fact work, and I'm one of those folks. I would recommend that the city officials here reach out to their counterparts in Arlington, because I think what you're going to hear from them is that there are tools that will work efficiently without driving up a lot of expense. And I will add that, of course, no system of detection is perfect, but you don't abandon rules against speeding because some people get away with it. The last thing I want to say, because I think I'm about out of time, coming close, is short-term rentals are not a valuable source of hotel taxes. In fact, because so many operators evade the necessity to pay hotel taxes, and I think your data here and in other cities show that, short-term rentals also actually siphon away from cities revenues that would otherwise be paid
Thank you,
by
Dave.
legitimate hotels.
Thank you,
So
Dave.
thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Jared Roker.
Good evening, Council. Jared Roker here. I'm the Vice President of the Fort Worth Short-Term Rental Alliance. Just want to say thank you so much for your time. Until you sit out here a few times, you really don't get an understanding what you guys have to get bombarded with from every angle. And so we really do appreciate your service. I just wanted to give you an update that our organization sent out over 300 emails to registered neighborhood associations and alliances today, inviting or requesting that we can attend their neighborhood meetings and work with their various alliances to see if we can work together on a short-term rental ordinance. I'm happy to say we've gotten some positive feedback and some requests to come and speak. Pointing out to what David had to say about the compromise working in Arlington. So my question is, if it worked in Arlington, why can't it work here? Why can't we compromise? Why can't we work together to make something work here in Fort Worth? So that's a good point that he brought up. I will say that, our goal is to build an ordinance where we work together and build support for an ordinance that supports as many people in Fort Worth as possible. And if we work together, we'll build the best ordinance that we possibly can. And as a former president of a neighborhood association here in Fort Worth, it was very important that whenever we had an issue of contention or anything, we brought it before our members. My concern is some of what you're hearing, because bad news always travels faster than positive news, right? What you might be hearing might be mostly opinions of boards and not of the residents themselves. And that would be my concern. So if there's any boards here that have made this decision on behalf of their neighbors and they haven't brought it before their neighbors, I highly encourage you to do that. At the very least, let them take a vote, whatever you need to do. But don't just assume because there's 5 of you on a board that represent 2,000 homes that what you 5 have to say is what the neighborhoods really want. So I just want to offer that up. We're doing everything we can to support the cause and come to an agreement on an ordinance that works for everybody. We've extended the olive branch. We're doing things in the community. And I think if we work together, that we can really forge an ordinance that's great for Fort Worth. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jared. I believe that's the last of our speakers, but I just want to make sure no one had checked call and maybe they're here in person just in case. Yes, ma'am. I did. What's your name? Yes, come on down. Thank you. Judy Taylor. Let me see, Judy. We'll check that just a second. I didn't see your name on here. Go ahead, Lori.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lori Dugdale, and I reside in Milam Street in Fort Worth. I'm a Fort Worth native, a property owner, both my home and investment real estate. I have spent the past 30 years as a licensed real estate agent here and a property manager in Fort Worth. I'm currently still a member of the Fort Worth Board of Realtors. And in my years of property management, I have experienced many changes implemented surrounding rental properties, both long-term and short-term. And 2 things I wanted to point out of things that did work were some of the examples of other cities here in Tarrant County that they implemented that really worked with regards to rental properties and registrations. The city of Hurston-Watauga, if you're renting a property, you're in-state, out-of-state management company, that property has to be registered. You can register it online. Once a year, you have to input who the owner is, who the tenant is, who the management company is, and any contact information. Also, if a tenant is moving in, moving out, that property needs to be inspected. That property needs to adhere to the city requirements, and as an example would be smoke, fire detectors, it's habitable, secured locks, so forth. And it really helped clean up rental properties, as I like sometimes refer to, slumlording. We have rental properties. We have homeowners. Our city is growing so fast, and in my experience, I just cannot get over the amount of people moving into the area. And they're not just from California buying. They're visitors, our tourists. I mean, even with just some of the rental properties that we managed, not even just the short term coming from Airbnb, traveling nurses, COVID. We had doctors, we had nurses, they needed places to stay. Our freeze, whether it was 3 months, 5 months, a lot of rental properties that were able to, to help with that. And so my opinion was that rental registration really works. Short-term, long-term, holding property owners accountable for the health and safety of that property. My second was also to be reminded of one of the things that I listened to in here, and that's fair housing. We have people visiting here. Let's remember our Fair Housing Act. We cannot prohibit on who we rent to, who we sell to, based on our act. So anyway, thank you for your time. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Lori. That's the last of our speakers. Judy, I don't have you on my list, but I'm going to come find you, okay? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.